Okay. So, I'm waiting for you. It's not us. Okay. 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 Oh my god. I hope I haven't finished our other session too early. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, I guess they only may be problematic because other people want to enter the room already. Okay. Okay. So thanks a lot for joining the presentation about Swipe Away. We're watching you by Fortinet.
All right, hi, my name's Key, and Liang is out here in the audience somewhere. Welcome to our presentation, Swipe Away, we're watching you. So in this presentation, we'll be discussing point-of-sale malware, more specifically RAM scrapers. We're going to begin with some background information, and then move on to how point-of-sale malware actually works. We're going to have a short demo, and then discuss the evolution of one particular family, Dexter. And I'm going to finish off with some discussion on the future of point-of-sale malware. So, some background information. I'm going to first describe to you the credit card transaction and the players involved. There is the cardholder and the cardholder's bank, the merchant and the merchant's bank, and the payment processor. So when the cardholder reaches the merchant and swipes their credit card, this data is passed to the payment processor, which is then passed on to the cardholder's bank for authorization. If this is passed, then the message is actually relayed back down. The point-of-sale terminals that manages the transaction of the cards need security measures to protect the sensitive data, and this is mandated as part of the PCI data security standard, where one of the requirements is that data must be encrypted when it's being stored, transmitted, or received. One problem is that when the user swipes the actual credit card, it is stored in volatile memory momentarily, where this is actually the target of the point-of-sale malware. So to the left, you see a number of point-of-sale malware families. Some of them are responsible for the data breaches we've been hearing about in the news recently. On the right, you can see Target, where 40 million cards were compromised. Goodwill Industry had 800K cards compromised earlier, or reported earlier this month. And then Home Depot just a couple days ago with over 56 million cards compromised. So how is it actually infected, and how does it get on the machines? They use very normal techniques. It can be an insider job where employees are bribed into installing the actual malware. We've seen samples such as a vSkimmer, where there is an offline mode, where if you stick a USB, the actual stolen credit card information will be written to the USB. Phishing, social engineering, and the most popular, or what we've seen in the news most recently, is actually accessing the point-of-sale terminals through remote administration utilities. And typically, the attackers will find these utilities and then try to brute force the login before deploying the actual malware. So moving on to how point-of-sale malware actually works, it doesn't matter which family the malware is from, it will still perform three main functions. This is first dumping of process memory. The second is scanning for and extracting of sensitive data. And third is the exfiltration of the actual stolen information. So moving right into it, dumping of process memory begins with the process iteration function, and typically either create tool help 32 snapshot or enum processes API is used to create a list of running processes. At this point, the malware will typically check the process name against either a blacklist, which contains system processes, or a target list, which is related to point-of-sale applications, either applications or applications that are processing the transaction. After it's checked that the process is either in the target list or not in the blacklist, it will actually open the process and query the information of the virtual space, checking for page protections before it actually dumps it to memory in preparation to scan the actual scan for credit cards. So before we get into how this actually happens, we're going to first describe the data on the actual cards. On the backside of each cards that I'm assuming most people have, you'll see the magnetic stripe. And this magnetic stripe contains three tracks. There's track 1 and track 2 are used for by banking institutions to store the sensitive data. And most, but not all of the data that actually appears on the physical card is also encoded into the track. So this includes the primary account number, the cardholder's name, and the expiration date. There's actually a CVV1 value that is also encoded into the track data. And don't get this mixed up with the CVV2 value that actually appears on the backside of each card. Mostly it's used for e-commerce or buying things online. And then there's the EMV chip, which we'll be discussing a little later. So these cards are compliant to the ISO IEC standard, where the track 1 and track 2 formats are stated. And what we got here is just a simple magnetic stripe reader. And actually, I'm going to need some help from the audience. Does anyone want to lend me their credit card? Okay. We actually have a break. Yeah. It's okay. Don't worry. Trust me. It's all good. I know how to work this. You sure? Just kidding. All right, so swiping the card and filtering or separating into components. As you can tell from the name already, this is my co-author. It's a card that's not valid any longer. Let's just take a look at track 1. It starts with the start Sentinel, which is a % sign, followed by the format code B, which is for banking institutions, the primary account number, cardholder's name, and expiration date, which is all separated by the field separator, which is a caret for track 1. Just wanted to bring to your attention track 2. The data is actually very similar. The only missing point is the cardholder's name. Also, these two fields, the start sentinel and the field separators, are also different. And I want to just bring this up because this is typically the first byte that the malware checks for in its searching. So moving on to how the malware actually searches for credit cards, there are two approaches. First is just a simple regular expression, and the second is custom pattern matching. For regular expression, it's less flexible but easier to implement, and a number of malware families are using this technique, as seen in Alina, vSkimmer, and Chewbacca. What we see there is just a simple graphical representation of a regular expression seen in Chewbacca. And in custom pattern matching, this allows for the malware authors to have more control of the types of cards to target or to filter out. And we've seen this in a number of families such as Dexter, which we'll be seeing in the live demo, JackPOS, and backoff malware. Once again, as I mentioned earlier, the algorithm varies, but it typically begins with the begin sentinel or the field separator. I'm going to quickly take a look at JackPOS's track 1 searching algorithm. So it begins with the begin sentinel, followed by checking the format code B. and then using the first digit of the primary account number as a case statement, where the first two cases are displayed on the screen. For case 1, the second, third, and fourth digit are checked for 800, and for case 2, the numbers 131 are checked. So you can say that JackPOS either filters out any cards, at least for the first two cases, that do not start with 1800, or for case 2, 2131. Or on the other hand, you can say that it's actually targeting the specific card issuing issuer. Once the credit card information has been stolen, it is now the final step where you have to exfiltrate it to a CNC server. There's nothing too special about this. We've seen samples use HTTP, FTP, and even Tor. HTTP is by far the most frequent we've seen. In this case, a post request is generated, and what you see on the screen is actually the post request for Dexter. And what I wanted to just point out is the UMP field. We'll see a little bit more of this in the actual demo, but the UMP field will hold the stolen credit card information. So I'm just going to quickly introduce Dexter before the demo. We attempted to create a timeline of the development of Dexter based on the time date stamp. And this field in the PE header actually holds the compilation time. And we typically, some malware authors may deliberately modify this field, but we didn't see signs of this, so we attempted to create this timeline. So it begins with spread in 2011, VXX10 in 2012, Millennium Stardust Revelation in 2013, and then Misto in 2014. Just a number of noteworthy features. Once again, not going into too much detail, these features are seen from the first version all the way to the last. The first is the creation of 5 threads versus the auto-run registry monitor, which will monitor the registry, seeing if there's any changes. The Internet Explorer injector, which will continuously inject its malicious code into Internet Explorer in the case it's terminated. There's a shutdown log-off detector, an event monitor, and the actual RAM scraper. Not only this, Dexter is able to receive CNC commands. It's able to update itself, modify how frequently it logs into the CNC server, and also the frequency in which it actually scans for credit cards. It's also able to download additional malware and uninstall itself. All right, time for the actual demo. So what we have here is actually just a simulated point-of-sale terminal. And on our local machine, have the CNC server. This is just some leaked version of it, an earlier version. Logging in, it brings up just a couple of simple pages. There's the dumps view, which will hold the credit card information, the master or bot control, which sees all the bots, and then a page to allow you to upload additional files. I'm also going to open up Wireshark just to see the traffic between the bot and the CNC server. All right, so the first step is to actually infect this machine. I'm going to first run this stardust.exe application. What it's going to do is first inject the malicious code into Internet Explorer, where it will begin the process of iterating through the processes, searching for credit card information. In addition, it'll also drop a secure DLL.dll file, which is related to its keylogger, but we'll discuss this later in the presentation. All right, so running this application. As you can see in Wireshark, there's a post request to the actual server. The frequency, it typically logs in with a server every 30 seconds or so, but default at around 10 minutes or 1 minute. So we'd expect that navigating back to the bots control, we can see that data has been logged. And this is as expected. The version number has been logged, the remote IP, username, and also the computer name. Now it's time to actually swipe the credit card. And once again, I'm going to use Liang's credit card. This is just a simple application for this particular magnetic stripe reader. But all right, so swiping the card. Okay. I'm going to navigate back to the Wireshark. Might have to wait a little bit. But all right, so taking a look at the most recent post request. If you remember from earlier in the presentation, I was discussing the parameter UNP, and which would contain stolen credit card information if it's found. And as you can see, there is data being sent, and it is encrypted, but if we navigate to the dumps viewer, we can expect that this information has been logged. And once again, both track 1 and track 2 data have been logged with the cardholder's name. All right, so that concludes our short demonstration. I'm going to return back to our presentation now. So what we just saw in the live demo was the second version of Dexter, or Stardust. Because of timing, we're only going to be focusing on the 3 most recent versions, Stardust, Revelation, and Misto. Getting right into with Stardust. So with a compilation date of February 2013, it's the first version with a functioning keylogger. This keylogger follows this original Windows model, where set Windows hook is called to install global hooks. These hook procedures are included inside the secure DLL.dll file that we saw dropped in the live demo, where the keystroke will be logged into 2 log files, stroke.log and temp.log, both of which are encrypted, but the encryption is very simple. An example is seen on the right. The first 4 bytes of the file actually is the key, or BKUT, and an example is taking the plain text letter B and XORing the 4-byte key in sequence. There's an example of some encrypted code on the screen. By decrypting it, we can see that it includes some stolen credit card information. And what Stardust actually does is opens these key log files and searches for the credit card information. And if there's any found, then it'll become part of its post request, identified by these 2 tags, AVR start and AVR end. The next version is Revelation, as compilation date of October 2013. This version has 2 main modifications we'll be discussing now. So the first modification is that, like I mentioned earlier, Stardust has a keylogger that follows the original input model. For Revelation, there's a second keylogger that has been added that follows the raw input model. The differentiating feature of this is that a device that is actually interested in receiving raw inputs must first register the device with register raw input devices, where the first parameter is a pointer to a structure raw input devices. Since Revelation is interested in receiving keystroke, it will also set the flag RIDEV input sync, which will receive keystroke even when the window is not in focus. The second modification is the addition of a second exfiltration method. It's the addition of FTP. And for this, 2 sets of files are used, where the name, for example, debug.log is appended with the strings ASDF and YRGH. And both of the files, the contents are exactly the same, and we will be discussing that in the next slide. What's interesting is that in the body of Revelation, there's actually a 3rd set of files that are used, where the base name is appended with MTOZ. And we can expect that if there's any future development of past Revelation, that it may support up to 3 exfiltration methods. So talking about the data, as you can see on the bottom of the screen is actually just some data that, sample data. By decrypting it with the same algorithm, you can see a number of tags and some data inside. It's kind of hard to see, so I've also included the tags above, scraper, hooker, keylogger, and logmein. That's not my spelling mistake. That's how they spelt it for scraper. So that holds the credit card information from the process memory. Hooker is the data from the original keylogger. Keylogger is from the second keylogger, or the one with the raw inputs. And logmein is a subset of that keystroke where the window contains the title logmein. So just to recap the last two versions, Stardust had the original keylogger, Revelation had an additional keylogger, and then also for Stardust, started off with only HTTP, and Revelation had both HTTP and FTP. The next and most recent version is Misto with compilation date of January 2014. As you can see, it doesn't really follow the timeline, which leads us to suspect that the authors had either reverted to an older version or branched off from an earlier revision. This version also has a number of modifications and a couple unanswered questions. So the first modification is that any subroutines that use sysstrings will have the characters written to the stack. The example you see on the board or the screen is ursd.ini, which will contain any of the stolen track data collected by Misto. The second modification is, unlike the last couple of versions, which included a blacklist, which contains system files, it actually has been changed to include a target list. The point-of-sale applications are listed there, Helios, Comcache. Misto also has a number of unanswered questions. The first being that a number of auto-run registries are created where the value is equal to a hard-coded Java s.exe. This is not dropped by Misto, so we were expecting that in any future development, either Java s.exe will be dropped or will connect to a FTP server for downloading. The second is that Misto doesn't have any CNC functionality. By itself, it's not able to exfiltrate the actual data to a CNC server. Based on the second figure you see on the screen, we speculate that the authors have actually modularized the Dexter and can store the actual CNC functionality in a separate file, ipsm.exe. The most recent version with compilation date of March 2014 actually answered one of our questions pertaining to the auto-run registries. A number of instructions were written to a file K, where the firewall notifications will first be disabled before connecting to a malicious FTP server and downloading the actual file. Unfortunately, when we were at the time of analysis, we were not able to locate the server and download the file. But yeah. So that concludes our talk on the evolution of Dexter. And we're now move on to discussing the future of point-of-sale malware. So what is to come? As you may already know, by October 2015, there's going to be a liability shift, and most credit cards in the United States, at least, will include the EMV chips. And this is actually just following the adoption seen in Asia, Canada, Europe. And they're known to be more resilient to cloning and a lot safer, or maybe not. So this means it's the end of point-of-sale malware. So the first point is to mention is that there's still quite a bit of time between now and October 2015. You could probably expect there to be more point-of-sale malware from now till then. And the second point is just talking about EMV-based RAM scrapers. Is to note that the EMV data is very different to the data seen, like the tracked information. But in a couple of minutes, I'm going to try to show you that you can use the exact same methods to steal the data. But before I can do that, I'm going to first need to tell you a little bit about the data on the EMV chips. These EMV cards store the data in a file system structure, where some of the records are by design in clear text. One of the records holds the cardholder's name and the track 2 equivalent data with tags 5F20 and 57. you'd think that at this time you can just clone directly to a magnetic stripe card, but this is actually not possible, or it is possible, but it's kind of useless because there are security measures like the ICVV, which will protect it from cloning. Having said that, even though you can't clone directly to magstripe, you can still get a lot of data. You can get the cardholder's name, you can get the primary account number, you can get the expiration date, which is enough for some card not present transactions. And yeah, so I'm going to try to show this quickly. Sorry. So what we have here is just a simple Python script that follows the exact same methodology that I've described in the presentation, except that instead of, for the regular expression, it uses the tags 5F20 and 57. And I'm first going to start the process. And then I'm going to open up a simulated terminal that I downloaded from MasterCard. So first I'm going to enter just an arbitrary amount of money, and then it's going to prompt me to actually insert a credit card. And since I don't have a fake credit card, I'm going to insert my own credit card. Hopefully this works.